guys, and welcome back to my channel. And today's topic of discussion is immigration. I feel like immigration has been basically in a political sphere for the last 5 elections, maybe more. And it hasn't gone away. People are still talking about it, not even just here in America, but also overseas in Europe. It's a big thing. And a lot of people have very vastly different opinions when it comes to immigration. So before I get into the topic of immigration, I kind of want to give you a little bit of backstory about me and my political ideology. So I first started paying attention to politics when I was about in high school, like late high school, and I made a conscious effort to be more involved in what was going on, because I didn't grow up in a family that knew what was going on. They didn't pay attention to politics. Nobody really voted in my family, or at least in my immediate family. A lot of people in my family, the first time they voted was when Obama was running. I grew up in a family of conspiracists, like a lot of conspiracy theories, and that's why I'm probably a conspiracist. But I wanted to be informed because I wanted to pass that down to my children. I don't necessarily think the president has a lot of power, and I don't necessarily know if our votes really count, but I do think it's important to know what's going on so you can be aware of what's happening. So when I first decided to pick out which party I would sort of place my bet on, I decided to go with independent. And I've always marked independent because when I was in high school, when I was younger, the cool thing was not having labels. I know nowadays having as many labels as possible, that's what's trending on Twitter. But when I was growing up, labels were like, ew, I don't like labels. I don't want to put myself in a box. I don't have labels. So I thought independent was like the least labely label I can give myself when it came to my political ideology. But for the most part, I always leaned sort of moderate, but I had a lot of liberal ideas as well, liberal beliefs, and my personality just leaned very much to the left. And when I say liberal, I say old school liberal, which is live and let live. When I think of liberal, that's always what I thought of, but now liberal is like, let's police everybody's words and thoughts and lives. That is not liberal. That is not what I thought liberal was when I was growing up. So when I say lean to the left, it was more like just live and let live. I don't really care what you do, as long as you're not hurting anybody. I grew up, most of my adult life, I was in LA. I had a lot of liberal friends. So yeah, so for the majority of my life, for all of my life, anytime anybody has talked about immigration, I always went to the left. And I have to admit, I very rarely ever thought to even listen to what the right side was saying, because to me it was more like, no, just let him in. I love everybody. I don't want them to be stuck in the water. No, just let him in. For me, I feel like a lot of old school liberals anyway came from a kind of a good place where you hear the stories about these people who are struggling in these different countries, who are getting killed or can't feed their kids, or there's no jobs, and you, from a place of empathy and love, you don't want to turn those people away. You want to let them in. And so that's where I was coming from. And then a lot of times when you hear the right wing or the Republicans talking about how they don't want immigration, it's always like this white, stuffy old rich white guy in a suit, and I can't relate to that. They don't relate to me. So I very much was like, I'm not listening, because whatever, you just hate Mexicans or whatever. By the way, Hispanics aren't the only immigrants in America, by the way. So I know that's what we always focus on, but they're not the only immigrants in America. But I always did believe that the law should be followed. There's a law for a reason, and I did think immigration laws should be followed, and no one should just be able to get away with breaking the law. At the same time, I was very much for the pathway to citizenship, especially if you've already, if you applied yourself, you have a job, you're paying your bills, you're adding to the economy, your kids are going to school, high school, college, or when you're becoming probably a better citizen than some other Americans who were born and raised here, then I still believe that there should be a pathway to citizenship. I don't believe that we should just, put all the immigrants on a truck and just taken back over to the border or whatever country that they're from. Like, I never believed in that, and I don't necessarily believe in that now. But I have started doing something because I'm much older and wiser. I started listening to the other side. I started being like, okay, like, let me hear what you have to say. The other day, like, I started watching a couple of Politicon videos, which is like, it's kind of like animation thing. Like, you know, when you go to the big convention centers for anime, it's like that, but for politics. When you have all these people, whether in a public eye or not in a public eye, like, have these debates on different subjects and stuff like that. And they were having a debate about immigration, and I forget the woman who was probably on the right side. The left side was the Young Turks, which I stopped listening to a long time ago because they're race baiters and they edit their shit to make it fit their ideology. And whether you're telling me what I want to hear or not, I want you to tell me the full truth, nothing but the truth, and not piece it together to fit what you believe that you wanted me to see. Anyway, so she was having a debate with one of the Young Turk news anchors or whatever, and they were talking about immigration, and the woman was actually saying that as much as the left, the progressive or the left side constantly feels like it's the rich, stuffy old white men in a suit who are scared of Hispanics and they don't want the Hispanics to come ruin the rich people's lives and stuff like that. As much as that's when we think about the opposition, the people who are against immigration, when you think about that as a liberal, that is what you think about. You think the scary, rich, old, like, racist white man in a suit. That's what you think of. That is the face of the people who don't want immigration. But actually, immigration, for the most part, indirectly, does not actually affect them. Illegal immigration does not directly affect the 1%. Illegal immigration does not directly affect the professional middle class. Illegal immigration does not directly affect the white man in a suit. Illegal immigration really doesn't even directly affect the working middle class. Illegal immigration directly affects, and there are immediate effects to the people who are already suffering. The immigration affects the lower class working families. Illegal immigration affects the families who are already living under or at the border of the poverty line. Though those are the ones who are getting affected by illegal immigration, and so, or mass illegal immigration anyway. And so, like, you have the progressive liberals who stand on this sort of moral high ground of like, no, we care about black and brown people, we care about people in poverty and stuff like that. But at the same time, you're not actually paying attention to how illegal immigration is affecting them. You know, when it comes to taking jobs and stuff like that. Like, it's already, for people in lower class families, it's already hard enough for them to find jobs, and then you have other people from other countries coming and take those jobs. The schools in lower class neighborhoods are already overcrowded. Those teachers are already stressed out and just pulled too thinly, and then you have all these other kids coming from other countries filling those classrooms up even more, and they may or may not speak English, so now the teacher has to take their attention away from the kids who are in that classroom, pay attention to the kids who are in there to help them catch up. So it's affecting the people who are already suffering. Those are the people who are being directly affected by illegal immigration. So I understand the empathy that it goes with wanting to help people who are running away from horror, but do we have empathy for one group of people at the expense of another group of people that were already here? If you go, like, and I feel like this is on purpose, when when you see on TV, when they talk about illegal immigration, they only show you the rich white ass guy in the suit that represents the Republicans. They don't take the cameras into the lower class neighborhoods. They don't ask the black and brown or the white lower class families what do they think about illegal immigration, because I think it would put a different face on it. I think it would make people think a little bit differently if they go like, oh, wait a minute, like, it's not the dude living in his tree line street mansion, he's sitting pretty. Illegal immigration doesn't really affect him directly. Like, it may affect him some way, like indirectly. It may trickle down his way at some point, but directly it's affecting the people who are already suffering. It's affecting the people who already needs help. It is stretching that welfare system even more and taking away from the people who are already here who needs it. So it made me rethink how I feel about immigration, and I am in no way saying that I'm right or wrong about anything, and I don't know the answer to to this problem. I don't know how to necessarily fix it. I'm just saying that maybe instead of just shutting down the other side all the time, maybe it's time that we start to listen before the problem just gets too big. Because again, the people that the liberals say they care about is the ones who are being hurt the most by illegal immigration. I struggle with this because I am still very much an empathetic person. And I know if I was a mother, a father, or a parent, or whatever, and I had children that was growing up in a country where I felt like that would harm them, that they had no future, no aspects for life, that there was violence, there was drugs, there were no jobs, low education, or whatever, I would do everything I could to make sure I can get my children a better life. So I cannot blame people for wanting to do that. So there is a part of me that is still very empathetic to that, but at the same time, I have family who still live in those neighborhoods. I don't want them to get hurt by that. And I guess it does change when you feel like it's actually affecting people you love. And so, and again, I never thought about illegal immigration that way. I always thought about it like, oh, it's just the white guys. They're just racist, whatever. But it's like, wait, it's not actually really affecting them as much as it's affecting black and brown people or lower class white families. And so, yeah, so maybe it is a conversation that we should be having. I think it is, and even overseas right now, even what's going over in Europe, I think it's very easy for other countries who are not neighboring war-torn countries or third world countries like Canada, like we are their neighbors. They don't have as much, fear of a bunch of immigrants coming over. And so I think it's really easy when you're not dealing with the problem and when you're not in that situation to just wag a very shameful finger at people, to like criticize them for talking bad about immigration and just call them racist and just call them a bigot. And I'm not saying that there are no racists or bigots who don't like immigration. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying maybe it's not that simple and it's not that black and white. It's like I've heard the stories about the girls, young girls in Sweden and in these neighborhoods where it's mostly Muslim now or whatever. And I'm not saying the Muslims are bad. I'm just saying when you hear these stories of these girls saying that, I feel unsafe. I feel like my life is danger. There was once upon a time I used to be able to walk down my street at night, and now I feel like I'm not able to do that. The country that I grew up in no longer looks like the country that I remember. And of course, I think it's easy for people just to dismiss those things, and it could be propaganda, it could be fear-mongering, it could be because they heard Muslims are bad, so now they're just projecting that onto other Muslims. It could be all those things, but I don't think it's fair to just dismiss everybody's experiences. If you want people to take your experiences of I experienced racism or I experienced sexism seriously, then you have to also give that the same respect to other people and take their stories seriously. I'm not saying like everyone's telling the truth. I'm just saying like we can't just keep dismissing everyone's story. I think it's easy again to, when you're detached from it, to judge people that's involved in it. Again, I'm not saying I'm right and wrong, and I'm not saying I know the answers to this. I'm just saying like maybe it does deserve a conversation. Maybe both sides should talk about this. There's also conversation about there being sort of standardized tests for legal immigrants, not illegal, but legal immigrants who wants to come into the country. Basically saying like you should already have money as prospects. You already should be bringing into money to the economy. You should already have maybe a job lined up, a professional job, doctor, lawyer, teacher, engineer, architect, something like that. Maybe already be considered middle class, like already educated, already speak English, stuff like that. Like basically, because it is true that when you get illegal immigrants in, or even immigrants, because a lot of times, and because I'm not saying that all immigrants are like lower class families, I'm just saying that a lot of times when they leave their homes, especially if they're running away from their homes, a lot of times they're leaving everything they ever owned behind. Their homes, their possessions, their cars, their money, their jobs. A lot of times they might have had a profession over where they're from, and they come here and they have to start from the beginning. So they have to move into those lower class neighborhoods and get on welfare and stuff like that. So a lot of times in the beginning, yeah, they're a strain to our economy, they're a strain to taxpayers' money, but there also been some studies that says when immigrants or even illegal immigrants assert themselves and try hard and go to school and get jobs, eventually they actually add to our economy, and they actually add to our country in a positive way. They have a positive impact if they actually like assert themselves and do well. So this test makes me feel a little weary, because like, what is on this test and how would that test evolve over time? And just because someone doesn't have what you're looking for now doesn't mean they don't have the potential to do that later. Because like I said, so there's been some research that will suggest that sometimes immigration can actually help our country, because they will get jobs and so add to the economy. Their kids will go to school, go to high school, become lawyers and doctors and teachers and stuff like that. So they would have a positive impact to our country. Maybe not immediately, but sometime down the future. But these tests also measure potential. I doubt it. So I don't know about these tests, and I don't really know what the answer is. I'm just saying, like, maybe we should actually have a conversation, because again, illegal immigration does not affect the 1%, especially not directly. Illegal immigration does not directly affect the rich people in the mansions in Hollywood Hills. They do not affect the rich Republicans or the rich politicians. They do not directly affect the professional middle class. The people who are directly being affected by this in a negative way are people who are already suffering. Those are the people who are being affected by illegal immigration. The families who are already living in poverty, the families who are already struggling, the families who are already struggling to pay their bills, to feed their kids, and now they're having jobs taken away, and their school system, their classes being filled up, and now their kids are having a hard time even learning anything in school, so they can pass their grades, so they can go to high school, so they can go to college, and so they can make something of themselves. Not that I'm saying that living in poverty or living in a lower income family is an excuse to fail in life, because it is not. It makes life harder, it makes that pathway harder, it makes that journey harder, but that is not an excuse to not try your best and be your best. So I'm not saying that. You can still be a success. I'm just saying it does make things harder, and adding illegal immigrants to that can just make it more harder for other people. Anyway, you may agree with me or you may not agree with me. I'm just saying, like, I think it's worth having a conversation. I think the point of this is just like, maybe this divide, this separation needs to like come together. We need to actually have discussions and not just dismiss it because it doesn't match your political ideology. So if you have any of your own comments or your opinions when it comes to illegal immigration and how we should deal with it. Again, I still very much believe in a pathway to citizenship, but should we toughen the laws, or even if we should just continue to actually have this debate and have this conversation and not just dismiss it as right-wing propaganda. If you have any comments, any opinions, if you agree with me or disagree with me, please leave it in a comment section below. If you like this video, if you like these type of videos, please like this video, share it. If you want to continue to have these conversations, these debates, and these discussions, please subscribe. And if you subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get the notifications when I do upload. And thank you, and